Hey guys, what's going on today? We're going to be taking a look at probably my final commentary for any keys that are below the 12 level, which is City of Threads. Now I'm going to be going over everything that went on in this run. This was a full pug group. Now I do apologize, this was done on stream, but the quality of my stream, I just got a new PC and I didn't set it up properly. So I was streaming in like 822p or something like really weird. So the quality might be not as good as my other videos, but I hope everything still is visible and can make sense. Now, like I said, this was done on stream. This was done a couple of nights ago now. And honestly, I think City of Threads ends up being one of the more difficult dungeons. And I'm going to point out at what points in the dungeon that I think are the most difficult. It tends to be a lot of like very like heavy front loaded, where a lot of the difficulty happens in the first couple pulls in the first boss. And then after that, if you can make it past that, there's a couple of spots where, you know, there is quite a check. But outside of that, it's like not too bad. Anyways, we do have a rogue. So what we can do is we can activate this buff. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, it's engineers, rogues, and priests, I believe. But anyways, we're going to be doubling this pull. This buff gives us, I think, 15% damage increase or 10% damage increase. I can't remember exactly, but we're going to be doubling this pull. I'm going to be dropping an Ox statue and getting a kick on one mob to help them get grouped up. As soon as they are gripped, or grouped, I should say, I am AoE taunting as well as using an exploding keg to make sure I have a ton of threat, and you'll see my damage kind of skyrocket here. Sorry, I'm not tracking healing quite yet, but I think I'll swap over in a second. This ultimately comes down to use a lot of your defensives. This first pull is really scary. There's multiple kicks going off. There's a poison that goes on the tank, and there's also a lot of AoE damage coming out from this giant swarm guard. The swarm guard is the priority. Healers definitely want to make sure that they're ready for this ravenous swarm mechanic. You'll see a weak orb pop up on my screen that says group damage. That just makes sure that I'm using, you know, an ability when it happens, or for a healer to get ready for it. Once this guy goes down, we're good to go. We also committed lust to that first pull. Now, this next pack that I like to do, I like to grab this single silk binder by itself. We get a kick on it. I'm going to group it up on this purple marker, and I'm going to grab this other swarm guard. The reason why the start of this dungeon is so hard is because a lot of these swarm guards are very scary. And now that fortified is pretty much always in play at this point, they're always just going to do a lot of damage. This is a pretty efficient pull as long as a lot of your group can actually target the swarm guard instead, but we're going to nuke the scarabs here. So now we're just doing a little bit of 2-target cleave. This dungeon timer actually is really free if you don't wipe, so smaller pulls like this are actually totally okay. The Silk Binder does 2 main casts. You have Web Bolt and then Silk Binding. Silk Binding is kind of the prio, but the Web Bolt overlapping with the Swarm Guard AoE can result in a pretty quick wipe. But as you can see, here's the Xal'atath fix. It's the 5th week. Basically, you need to Dispel. Shamans are very good for this. They can drop Poison Cleansing Totem, and it pretty much cures all of it. We are very fortunate as Brewmasters that we have access to Detox, as well as Diffuse Magic if we opt into playing it, which at this level of key, most likely you should be, because it's just a powerful offensive. And then we're going to be going into this pack here with the second buff that we have access to, which again, it lasts for like 25 or 30 seconds. It's like 15% damage or 50% damage and healing, so it's like just really good. Again, double Silk Mage now, or Silk Binder, so we definitely want to make sure we're kicking the Web Bolts when we can. You can see that I'm not really, no one's kicking, so I kick there. We're still waiting on the Shaman and the Rogue to kick, but that's A-okay. We definitely have a lot of knockups in CC here through double Shaman. Not too stressed about it. I used Paralysis to also try to interrupt one. I don't see our group really kicking. Our Shaman finally did. That's good. This pull, you could use defensives on, but I like to pull all my defenses for the next pull. So it's like really hard pull, very easy pull. This pull is kind of like medium difficulty in terms of like damage. As long as you're kicking, it's actually not too bad. But if you don't kick, obviously it's going to be harder. And then this pull is very hard. This is where I see a lot of groups wipe. And this is where a lot of keys, like people will just hearth out and they're just done. Anyways, quick dispels actually makes quick work of that. I'm not sure why we only have 3 stacks, unless we immuned it or something, or they weren't in combat, or I don't know. Anyways, the little guys go down. We want to... The reason why these pulls go to shit is obviously like there's a ton of group damage going out, but this Twist Thoughts cast does a ton of damage. And these orbs, if the tank gets stunned or the healer gets stunned, it could quickly result in a wipe because it puts you behind. It stuns you for like, what, 4 seconds or so? Not good. And you also want to make sure you're kicking these Twist Thoughts. My kick just came back up and the Rogue's kick is on cooldown. Our Shamans weren't kicking often in this key, so that's like the one thing I would say. Like, for some reason, if these Shamans happen to stumble into this video, set focus macros are very useful for that. You set focus to the target you want to kick, and then you can just pretty much kick on cooldown without losing your target, which is super, super nice. If a lot of you end up hearing this part and want me to go over how to do a set focus macro, maybe I'll make a video or a short about it. But anyways, the Swarm Guard will go down nice and easy, and our Ellie Shaman will make it back here soon. All right, so first boss kind of rips some big damage right out the gate. So you definitely want to be careful as a tank. I normally go in with Celestial Brew, but right now, like, because of our just the way that we ended this pull and our someone dying, we had to like wait a good bit for like mana and everything. So I didn't go in with the defensives I want. So I'm going to be starting with Fortifying Brew here. Normally, I go into this pull and I have a decent Celestial Brew. So normally I start with that, but in this case I wasn't able to. The orbs come out, and ideally, healers should not dispel the first one until the frontal already, the animation's already showing. And then you dispel one, and the other person can just move to a safe spot and let it expire. And then we're moving away. You'll see the tick bar that I have at the top of my screen. That's just a weak core that I made. It's not for DBM or anything like that. It's actually available for Patreon supporters and Twitch subs for those who are interested. Anyways, the idea of this boss, in 12s and higher, it's a little scarier, but this boss should die well before you run out of space. But ideally, what you do is you kind of just like go in like a swirl formation around the room. So this next Vivacious Indoctrination, we're going to just be moving now to purple. I don't know where this boss resets. I actually got a little nervous here. You want to give basically enough room for everyone to kind of traverse the entire circle. And then you kind of just like loop your way back. Every tank buster, the subjugate, you want to use something. As a Brewmaster, you rotate between a defensive and Celestial Brew. So you Celestial Brew one, dampen harm the other. Celestial Brew the next one, diffuse magic the next. And then you do a Celestial Brew, and then you can Zen Med, or you can Black Axe Brew into another Celestial Brew, whatever you need. And then at that point, you'll have like dampen harm will cycle back up. So as you can see, we're kind of now looping our way back around. What I personally like to do is I try to put down a world marker, and then I also ping so people know where we're going. Putting down blue, removing X so people don't get confused. We're spreading. Once a frontal happens, we get a dispel. We dodge the orbs, and the second one goes off shortly after. So once again, now I'm pinging, making sure that my group knows what side of the boss to be on. At this point, they should know because it's kind of clear. But just in case you don't, pinging is very useful, but I like the old school world markers because then you don't have to keep pinging or people don't forget, because in this day and age, people have very short memories, myself included. So the rotation is the same every time. It's Tank Buster into frontal, into Tank Buster, into these orbs, into a frontal, and then into another Tank Buster, which I happened to get stunned by the orb there. Luckily, he was doing this indoctrination again, so it wasn't a big deal. You can definitely tuck the boss into this corner back here before the next move, or you can go center of the room at this point, depending on how much room you actually need. Boss goes down with Touch of Death, and we're moving on. And this next pull, I've done a video about this. This is kind of old tech at this point. If you don't know, though, you can pretty much start the role playing of finding all the eyes of the queen. You just saw me use Crackling Jade Lightning on that first mob, so you're going to see this queen coming in. You do want to be a little careful here, getting this pull set up, because Void Rush will end up doing a lot of damage here. The Shaman should be using Astral Shift, but he's not. That's okay. Astral Shift is a very powerful defensive. Try to use it frequently, especially on that like those Void Rushes. Null Slime is easy to dodge. It's pretty simple. But I don't think our group really committed a lot of cooldowns to this mob at all. Maybe King's Bane got pops. These guys do take a while, so you do want to use cooldowns on them. You have a long time until boss. This is probably the slowest part of the dungeon. But outside of that, it's pretty tame. You don't really need, as a tank, you don't, honestly, I haven't ever felt like I actually need to commit any defensives here. Every once in a while, I'll throw out a Fortifying Brew or a Black Axe Brew, but that's honestly mostly to get free extra damage from special delivery. Outside of that, nothing too crazy. Anyways, we're going behind this first building to avoid the patrols, and then we're going to see if this mob is here. It happens to be here, which is great. It could also be inside the building in the center, or it could be behind the building. I have a route. Maybe I'll remember to link it at the top of the video or in the description here. If I don't, it's on my channel, but also just let me know and I'll link it. I definitely read all your guys' comments, so I won't miss it. Generally speaking, you do want to try to prioritize the Eye of the Queen when you can, because the faster this dies, the faster you can go on to the next pull. It's most important on the last set, because you want to start role-playing for opening up the second boss arena as fast as possible. As you can see here, I'm actually detoxing our rogue, and that's to help clear it off. Tanks generally won't need a dispel because they tend to have high self-healing. And like, okay, so for example, like Expel Harm with a couple of Ox Orbs is going to remove that debuff. It's going to do 5 million healing very easily. So that's never the issue. Yeah, obviously Detox is a little bit more efficient, but what you can do is you can diffuse yourself or Expel Harm yourself and then use Detox on a player that can't, like a Warlock or a Rogue. Now again, it doesn't really matter because we have 2 Shamans with Poison Cleansing Totem, but for the most part, this affix actually isn't too bad for Brewmaster, since we have multiple ways to remove it from both ourselves as well as other players. I do like this affix a lot, maybe not from the healer's point of view or when you're running with a comp that doesn't have access to a lot of dispels, but when you can remove all the stacks quickly, or at least make sure you're actually removing them, because I've had a few times where mobs end up healing, 20% crit and 10% max health on a Brewmaster is very strong. Like, very strong. This is the strongest I've felt out of all of the weeks. You know, we don't really benefit too much from haste. The mastery isn't super great. Like, the leech is fine, but having increased health is like the one thing Brewmasters have always kind of wanted and cried out for in Mythic Plus. And now we kind of get it through this affix. Unfortunately, it goes away once you start doing 12s, but like doing this 11 and 11s this week so far have felt very good. I've attempted a few 12s, but obviously the Zaltath affix doesn't, it's not present there. But anyways, we're focusing down the Queen. There was actually a caster in this. It's like doing Glimmer Wave Blast or Glimmer Weave Bolt or whatever it's called. Just make sure you kick. It also does Mending Web. Mending Web is a pretty big heal. You want to make sure you save at least 1 kick for that. But generally, like, you only need, I think, 2 assigned kicks in this pull. Anyways, we're going to be moving on. So you always want to start in that first area that I was kind of in. You want to come to this backside next because it's the furthest away. And then you want to end the closest to where the RP event actually happens to unlock the second boss arena. So the way that I like to run back here is I go up these left-hand stairs here to see if it's on the other side, which is a potential. It would be right down here to the left. Or you just kind of just jump down here. If you see mobs now, like the little images, looping to the right, it's inside the building. If they're not there, it's going to be this mob here. I'm going to throw a keg. One little tip is I put down an Ox statue because threat is a little goofy here. The way that the mobs kind of like stagger in, no pun intended. You can AoE taunt the totem to make sure you actually lock threat, because I've seen it a couple of times where it's like almost like if you're snapping them where they don't, you can't generate threat on them, or it looks like you are, but you aren't. And then they'll just randomly melee one of your, melee DPS or your healer, and then that player dies. So the Black Ox statue is super good with the macro to AoE taunt it. Anyways, ideally you're killing the Queen first, though our Webmancer is going to die, which is, again, fine. And then as soon as the Queen dies, we want to make sure someone is near the RP so it starts immediately. So I'm paying attention to it. Touch of Death is coming up, so I will be able to commit it here in a second. He disappeared to do the Null Slam. Now I have Touch of Death. I used it on the wrong mob. That's okay. I didn't notice it at the time, but now we're just going to... I tried gating there, but it wasn't working for some reason. And we're off. Now, obviously... At the start, when I first started running this dungeon early on beta, I hated it, but this is actually now one of my favorite dungeons. I think the pacing through here is like really good. I don't mind the RP elements like in this area. It seems very chill, especially with like how lax the timer is. If the timer was too super tight, I'd be a little bit more upset. It looks like we're about 13 minutes into the dungeon and Lust just came up. So the idea is you Lust first pull, you Lust second boss, and then in theory, if you Lust on cooldown from this point on, you can get 2 more Lusts after this. Though what most people do is they Lust either third or fourth boss. I put down Ox statue because it does this cool little thing of, being able to pulse out AoE taunting. And it's interesting because it actually groups up these mobs really quick. Watch how fast they run. Look at how fast they just grouped up. They like immediately run at the totem right when they spawn. Which is obviously convenient, getting these guys stacked early and often. Now, unfortunately, this is a pug group, and we have a couple of range, so we don't end up doing the baits properly, but I'll get that to in a sec. There isn't a tank buster in this first phase, I would say, so just don't be in the Duskbringer, and when people have arrows over their head like you see there, don't stack with them, just stay out. I mean, if you are, it's like whatever, but you want to avoid taking the damage. If everyone was baiting up on the wall, these mobs actually they bolt into the wall, and if they're too close and they can't go the full distance, they end up not traveling. Like, they just stay still. So it's very good for melee uptime. When you have 2 range and a range healer, like, I guess it doesn't matter as much. But ideally, you bait it properly. Now, phase 2 is where it's scary for the tank. This Rhyme Dagger will happen twice. Generally, I'll use Celestial Brew with the group soak first. The group soak makes it a lot easier. The second set generally will overlap with like Duskbringer, which makes it a little bit harder for your group to soak. So generally that's when you want to use a defensive. You can see here I'm using Diffuse Magic. I also use my instant Vivify healing. And if I really need to, I could always Black Ox Spear. Unfortunately, the mobs ended up kind of like moving to the center of the room. So these synergetic steps are going to be just not super great. They're going to go all over the place. They're going to dash right back to me. And then they're going to dash away again. And then they're going to port all the way back over here. So, it's a lot of movements. Ultimately, like, just play the fight. It's not enjoyable for pugs, especially for melee, but that's a-okay. So again, now we're back in phase 1. You have to respect these slashes. They go very far. One other thing to note, do you see this purple swirl on the ground between like the bosses and my raid frames? Those replicate these images, but they don't do damage outside of that. So I could be standing in it, but now you can see all of them are spawning these Duskbringers. So they basically will replicate Duskbringer casts and shade/casts. But you could stand in that purple. It doesn't do any damage. It looks like it does, but it doesn't. Here they come. They're charging again, and then they're going to port. Maybe you'll notice me step into them. Again, they don't do damage. Yeah, like right here, I'm pretty much standing in it. You just want to be wary of where they are, because that's where the spells are going to be replicated. Once again, Rhyme Dagger is going to come out. I'm going to just pop. Do I Celestial Brew here? No? Okay, I did. Very weak Celestial Brew, but nonetheless. Second one, again, I have Diffuse Magic again now, and I also have all my other cooldowns. So ideally, you run out in the same direction. Most of us stayed together, and keep the bosses stacked. It's a pretty intense healing fight. You can see here 1.38 mil is nothing to scoff at from our Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman's very good, though, at this, at doing the thing. So I wasn't too stressed. All right, so you're not going to be able to see the Twitch chat, or not Twitch chat, the party chat, but the Shaman has all of his CDs coming up, and the Lock has Soul Rot, and the Rogue has Kings. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to double here. I have all my cooldowns, so it's going to be safe as long as you can keep things locked down. Luckily, Ellie Shamans are very broken for this dungeon because, I mean, they're broken anyways. Earthquake is such an underappreciated ability. We're going to commit a health pot pretty early on here with an early Celestial Brew, and I'm now going to have Dampen Harm available. I think we end up dropping an Earth Ellie as well. The Dispels come out, I'm going to detox myself, and then we're going to roll into Fortifying Brew. I am running Determination. Anyways, what I was saying about Earthquake is you can see here, it's just like knocking down mobs over and over again. When they're knocked down, they're not attacking you. So it's almost like a passive damage reduction for not only the tank, but also the group. Very, very good. And I pretty much committed all my cooldowns. I did a Black Ox Brew reset into another Celestial Brew. I still have the instant Vivify healing. I still have a Leg Sweep and a Dampen Harm available if I need it. I have 3 stacks of the debuff, which means I'm taking a little bit more damage from those slashes, but not a big deal. Webmancer we want to target to make sure that we're kicking the blast from them, and the Mend. Those 2 things you want to lock down. Luckily, Shaman, Garrotes are also really good for this. We actually have this comp is actually not too bad, outside of the fact that I'm a Brewmaster. If I was a VDH or something, that'd be much better. But not a big deal. This pull's pretty tame. You do have kind of like one little tank buster coming out from the... Is it the cons? No, I think it's the Pursuer. I honestly don't remember. It's pretty tame pull, though. I don't recommend doubling this up if you don't have to. That pull that I doubled, just split it into 2. Unless your group has cooldowns and you're very comfortable tanking all of those mobs. That was me accidentally putting down that world marker there. This is another pull that you could double if you're feeling comfy, but honestly, I'm just going to do it by itself. What I mean by doubling it is you can pull the big guy at the top of the stairs, but it's a lot of group damage, so you need to be ready for it. Plus, there's this weird thing where it creates a line of sight issue, so I recommend, if you feel like you have time, don't double this pull. Play it safe. That's what times keys. More often than not, I see tanks, and myself included, I've made this mistake before where I try to pull big to save time and it ends up costing you more time. When if you just play clean and do it, a pack at a time, double here and there, you'll time your 11s, you'll time your 12s. At the time of recording this, the nerfs actually just recently happened to the 12 keys. This was done before, but obviously it doesn't matter because it's not a 12, but 12 should be much easier now. And when I say much, they have nerfed it from 20% increased healing and damage to only 10%. So it's a 50% reduction on the, I guess it's like a pseudo 50% reduction on the level 12 affix, because the Xalatath affix still goes away, like the beneficial one, the Kiss Curse. Yeah, it's these venom sprays that do a ton of damage. Poison Cleansing Totem, again, OP. Detox also removes stuff. I like going left here. Going left here requires less kicks. Little less percent if you go this way, but with my route, we're going to end at like exactly 100. It's like 100.39 or something like that. I like to pull it all the way up to this giant unstable test subject. For some reason, I don't think they're scaling with key level, which is kind of nice. So their AoE damage is actually very tame. The thing that's scary is if you get a bunch of these knockbacks from this void wave that these unnaturalers do. Once this pack starts going down, there's two things that I'm going to do here. I'm going to pull the entire boss room by just tagging it with like here I just use Crackling Jade Lightning. I'm running back to the top of the stairs, and I'm going to tag this other pack and just tank it all here right at the top. I have an Ox statue down to make sure that it's pulsing threat as the mobs come in, as well as an AoE taunt when I feel like I need it. I like this tech a lot. Actually, this season, this was never a thing before, but running Ox statue feels very good. These mobs are going to slowly start coming up the stairs. The reason I'm doing this is because these mobs don't have a lot of health, but when they die, they spawn the boss. But the boss has like a spawning animation and a little bit of RP. So the idea of doing this, oh my god, that was triggering me. I couldn't, the guy was behind me and I kept trying to use all my abilities, but it wouldn't let me. Skill issue for sure. You want all the slimes to die. And now you can see in the boss room that the boss is now spawning, but it takes time. So you can make this a little bit more efficient by pulling this. Now there's an argument to be made. It's like, oh, well, if your healer needs mana, like he clearly does, there's not really an issue that you have boss spamming animation because the healer needs to drink anyways. This subject will eventually die. And then this to me, this is the hardest boss in here, in my opinion. I think last boss after the nerfs a couple weeks ago has been very good. Obviously, you do need to properly use defensives. You need to be able to get out of roots. You have to be able to kill the ads fast enough. You need a healer who can do decent throughput. Like, there's a lot of things you still need on the last boss, but I feel like it's a lot more manageable now compared to this guy. This guy's kind of a beast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to taunt him. I play four corners. That's kind of the idea that you do here. Every time he does his slam and you start soaking, you move to a new corner, either clockwise or counterclockwise, whichever direction you prefer running in. I go clockwise. It's a little bit just easier for me in terms of how easy it is to hit my keybinds while also moving in a set direction. So I'm going to soak these two first orbs here. I do have the Tank Buster that just faded on me, so you do want to be a little careful when you have the Tank Buster because it's reduced healing by 30%. I'm going to try to soak a couple. Luckily, I was able to soak that one. I almost missed it. If it hits the boss, I think he heals for 5%. It used to be 7, but they nerfed it a little bit. If you ever feel like you can't soak, but you'd rather just have the fight go a little bit longer, just let an orb hit the boss. Having an orb here and there hit, it's not a big deal. This guy doesn't have a massive health pool, especially if you commit lust to it. We don't have lust available, though. I soak 2 orbs here, and then everyone needs to be into melee and keep everyone topped up. I don't know what cooldown we had here from the healer. It looks like we just had Ascendance, maybe, but everything else included. But we're gonna have like things like Link and Tide and Ancestral Ancestral Guidance, whatever it is for the next. All right, so Poop is kind of cluttering that second corner now, so we're gonna be moving him to this third corner. I'm gonna soak the 2 kind of close orbs while everyone else kind of soaks behind. We're gonna get our Dispels. The Dispels are not part of the actual fight. They're only part of the Xalatath effects this week. Once these orbs are soaked, we're going to be moving out to the 4th and final corner, and the first corner will start to disappear here in a second. So you pretty much always rotate around, and the one in front of you will disappear. Every 3rd set, the 4th set disappears, or the 1st set on the 4th. I don't know if that makes sense. That's okay. Knockback's going to knock us into this corner a little bit, and we're going to just keep soaking. Ideally, you're only going to have to deal with 2 of the Dark Pulses. If you have to deal with 3, you're probably doing fairly high keys, and it'll probably take a little bit more coordination. When he's about to hit max energy, you want to soak the orbs far away so people can be in melee. So that's why I rolled out there, so everyone else can be in melee and not be standing in poop on the ground, which is really important. Very good link. Astral Shift came out from our Shaman. I have a little bit of off healing through like Vivify, as well as like my other cooldowns. I still have Health Pot. You can essentially treat Link as like a way to group heal. Like my Health Pot will technically heal everyone because it'll top me, which will then redistribute that health. I dispel myself for the crit and the max health, which is good. As you can see, the poop has started to disappear now in this corner, so I'm going to just continue to start soaking, and you're just going to keep rotating around the room until the boss dies. Ideally, you beat the third Dark Pulse, because generally you'll be at a cooldowns, and I find that the first Dark Pulse is harder than the second. That's just my opinion, though. All right, and we're at 89.62%, so we're going to be perfect for this last area. Now, they wanted to do this weird thing where you pull this mini-boss out of the room. This is not efficient. We did it anyways. I don't think it's all that great. I don't know what the strat is here. Maybe I did it wrong, but like the benefit of pulling him out is that you don't accidentally pull the other mini boss when he spawns, but we still get rooted here, which like through the wall. So like this clearly isn't efficient, right? And then like now what happens is like when he roots you, he's still gonna like run away a little bit. So having a melee in the group means that they lose uptime. It's just like it's weird to pull him out. I don't think you necessarily have to, but if you want to play it safe, it's not a bad idea. Roots come out, the boss backs away a little bit. I don't know if I tried aiming him into the wall a little bit actually, I think after this. But even when like he'll always try to like run away. Also, what's going on with this boss model? He's just like being super fidgety. So I'm like trying to get him into the corner, but like he instantly resets to a new position whenever I like turn my camera, it feels like. You can see he like just backed up. Now I can't hit him anymore. So it's kind of fine. It's whatever. Just make sure you're kicking and you're chilling. If you have a way to remove roots, definitely want to use it. And this is generic for everyone. For monks, we have Tiger's Lust. We can either use it on ourselves or on someone else. If you use it on someone else, you can always Touch of Death your own root. Generally speaking, I think it has less health than your max health. But if you end up doing that, you can only do it like every other root set, maybe, depending on timing. I do have an Ox statue down, which is allowing me to AoE taunt whenever these mobs do come in. I'm going to be utilizing this strategy on this trash pull as well as the boss. Ox statue is very good. I love this totem. I wish it was popular back in the day, but I have found that in Mythic Plus specifically, it's been very useful. And not just because like Brewmaster has had threat issues. I feel like the threat issues either were fixed and or there was maybe never threat issues and I'm just bad. But having Ox Statue as a backup taunt is very, very nice. So we're finishing this up. It looks like we're about 27:30, so we have like 7.5 minutes left, which is very nice. Pulling my Ox Statue out of the room, making sure we're not pulling this boss on accident. Our healer definitely wants to be topped. While I don't think this is the hardest fight in here, you definitely want to go in with all your resources. We're clearly not two-chesting it. There's no reason to risk it for the biscuit when we can just play it safe and time the key with now 7 minutes remaining. All right, so strat for this, it's pretty easy. Most people should know this already, but if not, just in case you don't, the orbs will always spawn left, right, and behind where the boss is facing. As soon as the orbs spawn, pull it out of the center and all of your group should be stacked. When you stack, what it's doing is it's creating a consistency with where the orbs are moving from. If you're in the center or everyone's spread out around the boss, the orbs will start coming from different directions, and because there's no indicator, it's very hard to tell, which is just annoying. So if you're all on the same side of these orbs, you always know that it's going to be coming from one direction. They're the same direction. You definitely want to be careful of the splice ability here. It does a lot of damage. Obviously, I have like a little tick tracker at the top of my screen. It's very good for me to know like if I need to vivify someone or anything like that, or if a healer needs to make sure they top everyone else up. But basically, when roots come out, I could Tiger's Lust myself, or I can Tiger's Lust a friend. You can see my Ox Statue is down just in case. I always go center of the room with this Tank Buster, the process of elimination. Generally, I'll commit Celestial Brew to 1, Diffuse Magic to 2 and 3, and then we're chilling. And I can save Dampen Harm for other abilities, or I can just rotate later on. We're going to make sure we're dispelling here. Splice is going to come out. You definitely want it off for this point because this is going to be a lot of group damage. And then right after this, it's going to be roots. So roots are going to come out. I don't remember if I Tiger's List myself or another player. I think we ended up just actually, I Tiger's List myself a little late, and then I used Touch of Death to break someone else out. Essentially, the name of the game is to break them out before the temporal anomaly things move, or whatever they're called. The little orbs on the ground. Here they are, shifting anomalies is what they're called. Tremor Slime, you just want to be nice and healthy for this. Beautiful Dark Pact there. The rogue topped himself, I think, with a health pot or just a big heal. Ox Statue once again is down. We're moving. We're dodging our feet. I'm going to AoE taunt now that the mobs are on the statue. I think, is Earth Lily down too? I'm just like losing threat. So I go center. I actually popped a Dampen Harm for this with a Expel Harm when I was low. Brewmasters are very good for a lot of these tank busters. You should never really be too worried. You're staggering most of the damage anyways. If you have a couple of Ox Orbs, your Expel Harm will pretty much top you in between the hits. And so this is the fight. Keep rotating around the room. Everyone should be on the same side of the orbs, so they're all dashing in the same direction. I targeted myself once again. We're going to kill this quickly. Now, ideally, if I was running with a healer who I wasn't super confident in, or maybe like a priest, for example, Tiger's Lust is very efficient to use on them just in case, just so they can be safe. But if everyone's stacked in melee and you have enough damage, these mobs are going to go down really quick, or I should say the roots will break very quickly. Definitely want to be topped before Tremor Slime, or at least like plus 70%. Again, the higher the key goes, the higher health you want to be. Ox Statue is down, putting in work, and this is going to be it. And that's it. That is the key. Surprisingly, this was actually one of my best ranked keys in terms of like world and US like region spot for when I timed this. I think it was like, at the time it was like US 300 or something like that, which I don't necessarily consider like good. I kind of like to see higher numbers. But anyways, I didn't think it was that hard of a key. I thought this actually was a little bit easier than some of the other ones that I think people have been struggling with timing. But major pain points of the dungeon, like first couple pulls, definitely rough. First boss and third boss, I think, are the hard kind of bottleneck points for a lot of groups. But if you can get past and figure those out, you're kind of chilling. Anyways, my talent build will be linked down below. My route video will be linked down below that I talked about a couple weeks ago, back like before the season even started. Let me know if you have any questions, and thank you guys so much for watching. Patreon supporters, big fan of all of you. You guys allow me to make content like this. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.